Hello and welcome to Courageous Conversations.
We're here to talk honestly about race, faith, and what it really means to love our neighbor at all costs.
Each and every episode, we are going to sit down with friends and leaders from across Kansas City to share stories. We're going to ask hard questions and we'll laugh a little bit along the way.
To unite people, unite neighborhoods, and eventually unite KC. Let's jump into today's conversation.
Hello, my name is Ray Jarrett. I'm here with my co-host, Gary Kendall.
Hi.
And welcome to what we are calling Courageous Conversations. You are going to absolutely love this because what we're trying to do with this podcast is to let people in behind the curtain on things that we talk about all the time that maybe you don't get a chance to hear. And so I want to give this over to Gary now. He's going to do a little bit more stuff for us, but then we'll just dive right in.
Yeah, Ray and I have the privilege of being a part of conversations in the city and beyond that we think everybody should hear this. I wish we could tell these stories, far and wide. And we're going to take a stab at that with this new podcast, and I'm glad that you're joining. In fact, I would encourage you now that whatever platform you're listening on, whatever format, that you would go ahead and you would subscribe and share. You can find us on YouTube, on Apple, and on Spotify. There may be others, but we would love for people to hear these stories and be as encouraged and inspired as we are as we contend for several things in our city. Unity, loving our neighbor, city flourishing. Mm-hmm. These kind of things are on our mind, and we want to tell you why.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, you may be looking at us and looking at this logo and going, well, what in the world is Unite KC?
Yeah.
And so let me give you a little background, Gary. I'm going to share that, and then I'm going to let you do the plot twist, okay?
All right.
Well, Unite KC got started back in 2000, right after the death of George Floyd. Yeah. I mean, it was a tumultuous time in our city and in the country. And there were some leaders here, and I could name drop right now, but they were very concerned about how our city was going to react to this, what seemed to be an injustice.
Right.
And it really wasn't just George Floyd, but there were Ahmaud Arbery and some others that came up in the news
Brianna
before
Williams.
that. That's exactly right. And we just really wanted to do more than what we'd been doing here in the city. And so Unite KC was formed. We got a groundswell of leaders and people who were interested, people who have been passionate about this subject of racial healing, racial reconciliation, racial harmony, and how we could do better.
Right.
And so we went on and we tried to find things that worked and community events and opportunities to talk. And that was really where we started out. It was like, just do one good thing, which was our motto. And we knew that a heart transformation would be the thing that just helped everybody. And then along the way, I met this great guy, Gary Kendall, and he'll tell you how he got involved in our mission.
Well, Ray, I still love the do one good thing.
Yes.
I like to think about taking steps that feel like that they're purposeful, but they're doable. Mm-hmm. And I think to do one good thing is a great way to start. And God will guide us to what that is, but we also have suggestions.
That's right.
I think about those days, Ray, as like a powder keg and someone lit the fuse. Mm-hmm. I mean, I think that there were a lot of things kind of under the hood, if you want to say it that way. And then the hood got lifted and it was like, oh my, we got to deal with this. And we really need to today. We don't have to wait for some kind of an event like that to trigger action. Mm-hmm. Like there's things we can be doing now. You mentioned our merger. I think that's what you were hinting at.
Yes.
And I started Love KC 7 years ago after I left the pastorate with a desire to help people to love their neighbor. And always inside of that desire is that our neighbors are all different kinds of people. Our neighbors aren't just the people who might look like me. Mm-hmm. In fact, a lot of my neighbors don't look like me. Some of them are younger.
Yeah, I know that one.
But the grade school that's next to where I live, there's 17 different languages that are spoken there. So When I think about loving our neighbor, I think about often it's going to require that we are pushing past our cultural differences to love people who look different than we do. And it's going to take that. So when I was thinking about Unite KC and thinking about Love KC that I led, I thought they're so similar.
Yeah.
We're both striving for racial harmony. We're both striving for loving our neighbor. We want to see our city flourish. In fact, I would publish things and we would do activities and I would see Unite KC's on the same track that we're on.
That's right.
Because you would do things that were very, very similar. And then it converged with the shooting that took place after the Chiefs' celebration for the Super Bowl. And during that really challenging time when 21 people were injured and one person lost their life, then we began to partner together to say, somehow we don't want that to be the last thing that our city thinks of when it thinks of getting together. And certainly these victims, we want them to believe that the church will be there for them and that they could feel the love of Jesus wrapped around them. And so we started partnering together for that. And I think it was just really a sign for us that, you know what, we should do this all the time. Don't wait for a disaster. Don't wait for a crisis. Like, let's just marry our two organizations and do this work together because we're certainly going to be better together.
Better together is exactly right. And as we went through that merger and all the due diligence and everything, Gary, I really found that we had a kindred spirit, a love. I started finding more out about you and the journey that you had even before we did the merger and before Unite KC was around. Yeah. And I want to just tell our viewers about a watershed moment we had when we were at a City Flourishing conference in Denver. We were sitting there waiting for breakfast. I think we were both hungry and hadn't had enough coffee, but man, we had this moment where we said, loving your neighbor at the very root of what Unite KC wants people to do is to love your neighbor because that's everything. Yes. And we said, your neighbor could be of a different socioeconomic class, a different religion, a different, race. I mean, there was several things that we came up with, but if I had to give our listeners a thing that they could do, it would be you live in a neighborhood, you have neighbors, you could start to engage them there. And why don't you talk a little bit about Bless and that?
Sure. When we started Love KC, one of the things we realized was everybody needs a tool. And for us, the tool was find a way to get to know your neighbors. And we used the Bless app for that. You can still find it on the internet today. So theblessapp.com. But essentially what the Bless app does is it just helps you get to know your neighbors. And sometimes it takes away the barrier of I don't even know their name.
Right.
Now, I don't necessarily tell them that I know their name, but I feel a little more confident when I do know their name. And the other thing we do is we pray.
Yes.
So prayer goes ahead of everything. But I remember talking that day about how that we've been sharing this idea of loving your neighbor and adopting your neighborhood was one of the phrases we use with people in Kansas City since 2017. And over 5,000 people have chosen to adopt their neighborhood in Kansas City. And so we know that this is a viral idea. The Bible it's often called the royal law. The Bible talks about loving your neighbor as you love yourself.
Right.
And I think it's the practical way we fulfill the Great Commission. But one of the first questions people will ask is, well, how? And so Love KC was really founded on helping people answer the question of how. And we have many ideas like prayer walking and other ways that we help people to engage their neighborhood. And I think that day we just intersected by realizing we're after the same thing. We may use different terminology, but we're trying to help people love each other. Sometimes it looks like racial harmony. Sometimes it looks like two old guys sitting on the back porch, having some barbecue and their favorite beverage. But you start with the opportunities God gives you, you love on people, and then good things happen.
Yeah. Gary, I want to talk about some of the top of funnel events that we have at Unite KC that actually get us to where we are doing one good thing and stuff. And so we have a couple of big events every year, the Walk for Unity and the Underground performance. And so those are ways for people to get an entry-level view into what we're trying to accomplish here in Kansas City. But they're very safe spaces, but they're intriguing enough to where you would ask questions, you would get to know people. And as you start to come down that funnel, you'll understand that, hey, when I talk to somebody, when I actually open up and have the courage to answer a question that I might not know, that you found a friend, you found somebody, and then all of the social injustices, the things that we want to see erased so that we can have a beautiful city, you can't really always start there, down here in the weeds. But if you start here and start building the relationships, man, you're just going to be so far ahead, and I think our city's going to be so much better for it. And so people are going to hear on this podcast, great stories. As a matter of fact, I think you have a couple, and we'll now we can act like two old guys and just tell stories and stuff.
We'll let them in on what our conversations go like on a day-to-day basis. Well, you said something I want to pick up on, Ray.
Sure.
I think we almost need a zero-grade entry pool. When I took my grandkids and they were younger to the pool, sometimes they wanted to walk on the water. They're just at the very, very edge of the pool. They're not sure if they really want in the pool or not. As they splash around, they feel like, hey, I want to get my ankles wet. Hey, I want to get up to my knees. And if they're short enough, that doesn't take very long. They might get into be waist deep and then they go, oh, I don't know if I want to swim or not. But they usually want to get all the way wet, and pretty soon they're jumping around into the medium part, and eventually they learned to swim and got down into the deep end. I think a lot of times people think about conversations that take courage in that same way. Like, I'm willing to dance around on top of the water. I don't know how deep I want to go till I trust you. But what invariably happens is people find out they have more in common than they think.
Absolutely.
And they get in that and they go, oh, you like this kind of music, you like this sports team, and pretty soon they're like old friends. And then they go deeper, and then they actually begin to sort of test out some of the thinking. And if they really have trust, they might even share what they reveal what they are feeling.
Really? Yeah.
And that's where it gets really good. But people need encouragement to go down that level. So you and I talk a lot about, if we want to be Unite KC, we're trying to unite individuals. That's the most basic level. And then we want to see if we can bring unity in a neighborhood. Maybe they have a block party. And then eventually we want to see our city united around the right thing. So you asked me about a story. Do you want me to tell it now?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay. So we found out as we started talking that we've both been on this journey for a long time. Throughout the early days of my life, some of my best friends were Black. And I grew up in a place you wouldn't think was a hotbed for racial harmony, but actually it was. It was in Anchorage, Alaska.
That was a fascinating story. And guys, I know that's a typical phrase you hear from white people. I really do have Black, but he really does have Black friends. So I'm just here to tell you.
I do. So in Anchorage, what made it unique was there's three different kinds of Indians: Eskimos, Aleuts, and Indians. And they're the indigenous people who were there way before us. So it's really their land and they're sharing it with us. But then there was an Army base and an Air Force base. So we had whites and Blacks. And then we have a lot of Asians in Alaska because it's up north. And so it was diverse. And I really thought that's how every place was. And fortunately, I think in part because people were displaced there from some of their original families or families of origin, they clung to each other. So people were there because they chose to be there, and they loved each other. I didn't even know what it looked like to not have harmony. I only learned that by the time I was like in high school. And then my parents moved me from Alaska to Kansas, and I'm still trying to figure out why. That was a culture shock.
Tell them what part of Kansas.
Oh, southwestern Kansas.
There you go.
Down in the very corner. I really didn't know there were such things as rednecks.
Man.
And I'll try not to be prejudiced here, but it's a real thing.
Yeah. Yeah. It's
I thought it was just created for TV.
right.
But yeah, you wear boots and you have a rifle in the back of your pickup truck, and you have short hair and wear a cowboy hat. I didn't know that, but I learned it real fast.
Boy, what a
and
shock.
that was like my first education into okay, we are not necessarily the same. I say all that to say, from that time till now, I really wanted to live in a place where I could enjoy the benefit of different races. I enjoy and love the different kinds of food. I like the personal insights that come from different races. I love the history of peoples and how they got to where they are. And even in the heartache, and there's a lot of heartache, I just feel the human connection that I think it comes because we're all made in the image of God.
Right, right.
And I think that probably the biggest and most important thing we could ever say is that when we see another person, we don't just make judgments based on their skin color or their culture or their history or their age or their gender, but we see the image of God in every single person. And imago Dei is the Latin term for that. And if we could start there, we'd make lots of progress.
Gary, you mentioned something that's so critical, and it's so true of Kansas City. I was just talking with one of our board members about this, and she mentioned with where she lives. Now she has a bird's eye view of the city. She goes here and there, and she's in Missouri, and she's in all these 5 regions that we talk about.
Yes.
But she knows that she has neighbors that have never gone outside of their neighborhood and all the stories, and so it's possible for them to not see a person that doesn't look like them for months and sometimes even years.
Right.
And how easy is it to have misconceptions about people when you know nothing about them and you haven't talked to them?
Do you remember what you told me?
What? Tell me which one.
One day we were talking about that, and I don't remember what I said, but I was talking about venturing out into other parts of the city, because Unite KC works in 5 regions of the city, north of the river, and then a north and a south region on each side of the state line.
Yes.
We were talking about that, and I was saying how important it was to me to get out to different parts of the city and meet different people. And then you said, if I wanted to, I could stay in my suburb. I live in Olathe. But you said, but that's not, and I could just be around people who are white. But you said, I can't do that because everywhere I go, my skin color says I'm black. And then you talked to me about some of the things that travel with that. And I just realized for the first time, I could choose as a white person to seclude myself in the suburban neighborhood and go into my house, close my garage door, and stay away. But you're everywhere you go, you're still black.
That's right.
And so talk a little bit about that.
Gary, the most interesting thing that I think I can come up with, I mean, I can give you some stories, especially of the people that we work with every day and every week, where they've had some horrible experiences, whether it's with the police or just, going shopping or whatever. But what I find just fascinating is that a lot of people are not just, I hate you because you're black, I hate you because you're white.
Right.
It's really the misconceptions are blinding them.
Yes.
And so that is actually, I tell people all the time, I said, man, that Ray Jarrett guy, he's the nicest guy you'll ever want to meet. And
that's true.
And I, at least I think so.
Until I met your wife.
She's way nicer, so. But the thing that actually would hurt my feelings more than anything is when I could see people avoiding me or, walking on the other side of the street. Right. Or, even asking me questions that were based on misconceptions. And, I'll just be honest, God's blessed me with a nice truck. And one day I was coming out of the grocery store, and I was actually looking in the truck because I'd forgotten my wallet. And so before I, opened it, I looked in there, and this guy goes, "Hey, why don't you need to get away from that truck? That's not your truck."
Oh, really?
And so I just clicked the clicker and opened it and didn't say anything. But it was a
It's
misconception.
wise on your part.
Yeah, I don't want to get into any
Right.
street fights or anything.
Yeah.
But that's just one of many things that people. But you know what, Gary, it works on the other side of it too.
It does. It
You know,
does.
I know that you have had people misjudge you, thinking that you were some kind of redneck, or something. So it's worked at. That's why United KC exists, because I know that even with the guy that misjudged me, that if I talked to him, if we sat down and talked, he would get to know that I'm a great guy and I could be
Yeah.
a great friend, and I'll give you all my stock tips and all the other things, right?
Yeah.
And so those
Buy
kinds.
low, sell high.
There you. That's my favorite one.
That's your favorite one. Yeah. I think a lot of it's based on fear, don't you?
Absolutely, at
I think
100%.
it's often not based on reality. Many times the people haven't even had enough negative reactions to say it's going to be negative. It's the unknown.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I don't think it's often that people feel like they couldn't find something in common or they might not like the person. I think what they don't want to be is they don't want to be judged. And if we can remove fear and judgment, we're going to go a long ways toward being able to have harmony.
Yeah. I'm going to tell a real quick story about two of our leaders who one of them had just a horrible interaction with the police, with her family and her kids. It was just terrible. And another person on our volunteer leadership staff is a police officer. And so she didn't know that this other leader had this interaction, but as they began to talk, as they began to converse, she slowly was able to lower her anxiety and reframe the way that she thought about our uniformed officers. And if you haven't seen it, it's on our YouTube channel, and it is just a beautiful story of how talking and having a heart change helps to heal.
We
each
should
other.
have them on as guests.
I think we will.
I've heard that story. It's actually emotional.
It's very emotional.
I was emotionally moved as I listened to that. I told you a story too, that early on in my ministry, I felt like, why is it that we're primarily a white church in Olathe, and we have very few people of color? And because there are people of color in Olathe, and they just didn't come to our church. And I thought, well, probably one of the reasons why is because our leadership is all white. And I thought about our music program, and I thought, I really wonder if I could find a worship leader who's black. And I think it'd help our music a lot.
That's funny.
But I thought it also might help us integrate our service
there you
better.
go.
So I also had a person in mind that Lester Estelle. And I wasn't sure if Lester would or would be interested, but I approached him. And he said yes, and that led to 7 of the best years that we had together at our church. And Lester brought so many good things. He plays a really mean guitar, and he's an inspiring worship leader. I love his heart and his whole family.
Yeah.
He has a very talented family too, but and lots of friends that he brought.
There you go.
And it was interesting to me as we were doing this that people on both sides of the racial issue, black people and white people would talk to me and say, I don't know if this is going to work or not, And black people were talking to Lester saying, I don't know if this is going to work or not. Are you sure you can trust Gary? Are you sure you can trust this church? And the trust issue goes both ways all the time. But by God's grace, we did make it work, and it was beautiful. And our church became more integrated. We started a Hispanic service. We hired a person who was Korean, another couple people who were Mexican, and it was beautiful. It would just over time we had like a slice of heaven, I would call it. And I do think when we get to heaven, like we're going to be astounded at all of the beauty and the diversity that's there. In fact, I think of Revelation where there's a picture of the Father sitting on the throne, and it says that all around him are people of every nation, tribe, and tongue.
That's right.
So
That's right.
if that's what heaven is, we should start practicing.
Yeah, there you
now.
go.
But it was a beautiful thing and a hard thing in some ways.
Man, well, I just applaud you for even taking that step. I know that there are pastors and leaders and even business people who are afraid to do that for what they think, and there's that word fear again, of what they think that people will think and experience. And I can see by the old clock on the wall, Gary, that our time
We're going to have to save some of these
That's right. We're going to
stories,
say,
right?
but I'm telling you, listeners, you are going to be astounded at the people that we bring on this podcast. They're some world-class leaders and influential people. And you're also going to actually love the fact that we have fun. Gary and I have a lot of good time. So, Gary, I'm going to let you do the outro.
Okay.
And you can just tell people.
I do want to remind you, if you're listening, that you can find this podcast, Courageous Conversations, on YouTube, on Apple, and Spotify. And I do want to encourage you to like it, to subscribe, and then to share. We plan to do we'll record twice a month.
Mm-hmm.
And we just want you to share it with other people so they can get the benefit of maybe taking some of the mystery out of these hard conversations. I'm going to leave a cliffhanger here, Ray.
Okay.
So one day Lester said to me, we were doing all the programming for Christmas and, along with it, graphics and things like that. And he said to me, do you think this is a year we should tell people that Jesus probably wasn't white?
Oh, boy, I think you've stirred the pot.
That was quite the programming meeting. So I'll tell you what we did with that at a different time. However, I think that if you as a listener begin to hear people relate in a natural way about the things that we all face,
mm-hmm.
it takes a little bit of that mysterious lid off of things. And then you could venture out and have your own conversations and then come tell us about them. And maybe we have you on the podcast.
That's absolutely right. And we also want to encourage you to go to our website. It's unitekc.org. And you can check out and see the events and other things that we've got going on. And just believe this, we are here to connect people and have courageous conversations. Excuse me.
Yes. Looking forward to it.
Thanks for joining us for this episode of Courageous Conversations.
We hope you heard something that encourages you to start these conversations in your own life.
Because when we talk, listen, and learn together, we move closer to uniting people, uniting neighborhoods, and uniting KC.
And don't forget, you can find more stories, events, and resources at unitekc.org.
So until next time, go love your neighbors at all costs.